PC Mag recently did a number of different surveys to see what is trending in tech right now. And the question that's really relevant to what we talk about on this channel, and I found really interesting, is what is your preferred gaming platform? And the choices were Xbox One, PS4, the Nintendo Switch, and PC gaming, obviously. And the results were a little surprising. They make sense once you think about it for a little while, but it's a little weird. So to begin with, let's actually just show the results of their poll. Now, the way they did this was actually kind of like electoral college style, where it's showing a map of the US and showing the preferred system of each state. So I'm just gonna put that image there for a little bit. You guys look at it, look at your state, see what it is. Great, cool. Now, once you've seen that, the interesting thing you might take away right away is, wow, there's a lot of green on that map, specifically Xbox One, which takes up 27 of the 50 states. Over half are saying that Xbox is their preferred system, which if you've ever kind of kept track of how systems sell, that sounds a little off. Not that the Xbox One is necessarily selling horribly, but when compared to the sales of the PS4, it's been roughly a 2-to-1 ratio for quite some time now, and the Switch has been blowing up as well. So seeing those numbers of showing almost over half for Xbox is kind of confusing. Now, to be fair, the first thing right away that's throwing all this off is the fact that it is being handled electoral college style. They're showing which one went up the majority in each individual state, and that might make it look like it's something like, oh, over half of people all use Xboxes and prefer that. That's not really how it works. And they actually give the raw numbers for the actual popularity results, which show a closer spread, but still Xbox in the lead with 31% people preferring it. Trailing shortly behind the Xbox was the PS4 at 28%, the Switch at 21%, and PC gaming holding 20%. So a closer spread than the map might make you initially think, but still showing Xbox in the lead, which still doesn't really line up with that logic of, hey, hasn't it not been selling nearly as hard as the others? And there's a couple different things this could mean, but here's the main theory. People who own and play on an Xbox One are dedicated to that system, whereas someone who plays on a PlayStation or a Switch or a PC is more willing to actually play on multiple different platforms. Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't people out there that play Xbox and Switch at the same time. It's just that those people who use Xbox are much more dedicated to that platform than people who are more willing to invest in multiple systems. Now, I know it's not always the best source, but anecdotally, this is actually held true for a lot of people who are friends and family of mine, coworkers. People who own Switches or PlayStations are more interested in actually owning multiple systems to fit whatever specific need they have. Maybe there's a game they really want to play that's only on PC, maybe there's a game they want to play only on Switch, they're willing to pick them up. Whereas people who own Xboxes, a lot of the ones I know, they stay focused on that system and that is their main system. Everything they buy and pick up is just stuff that is on that console. I think it's also worth noting that since this survey is focused on the US does have a history of having more people that are fans of Microsoft, whether because it's a Western company or just catered more to them in earlier years. When you look back at the Xbox 360 versus PS3, when the worldwide numbers were a lot more neck and neck and they were kind of even, well, when you look at specific regions, PlayStation was vastly preferred in Japan, and in Europe, PlayStation had the advantage as well. But in the US, the 360 had enough lead over it to balance out the rest of those world totals. By the way, just throwing this out here, this is also why some people aren't really huge fans of the electoral system, because when you have multiple choices like this and there is one polarizing choice and other choices that are kind of all over the place that people might be a little more divided in which one they choose, well, those ones end up having lower numbers because even if a larger number of people like them in general, they had to choose which one. Whereas all the people that were fans of the other option, in this case Xbox, well, they end up showing up a much more consistent numbers, leading to a graph where, again, over half the states show Xbox despite the overall lower sales. Also, to be fair, surveys like this can be a little misleading sometimes. It depends on who actually they polled. Even if they were trying to be very objective, they might have just gotten the right sample of people to where it did push it in the direction of showing a lot more Xbox. There's a lot of things that could potentially mess with how this data is gained, but still, I think it's a really interesting figure to look at. And it raises some interesting questions and thoughts about why people actually choose the system they choose. The reasons why someone would want one system over another has changed over time and evolved in different ways. For instance, back during Super Nintendo versus
What Nintendo?
It was very much about what games were on each system. If you want to play
Name Mario. Last name Mario.
for Zelda, you have to get a Nintendo. If you want to play Sonic, you have to get a there wasn't really such a thing as multi-platform games yet. There were some games that came out on both, but they were drastically different experiences a lot of times. For instance, if you really liked Mortal Kombat, well, you were much more likely to get it on the Genesis instead of the Nintendo, because that one actually had all the blood and stuff intact, and the Nintendo version didn't. As the years went on and things like multi-platform games became a lot more normal, the debate shifted a little bit. For instance, during PS3 and Xbox 360, a lot of it had to do with what kind of additional services and side benefits systems could give you outside of what games were on them. This is a large reason why the 360 sold a lot better than the PS3 early on, especially in the US, not just because it came out earlier, but because they also focused a lot more on online multiplayer, something that was still kind of a new emerging aspect of gaming, and they capitalized on it way more than PlayStation did. Even to the extent where, yeah, Xbox 360 you had to pay for online, and PlayStation was free, but if you've ever played on both those systems around the same time, you know that the experience was night and day, where Xbox, you're functionally getting what you were paying for. And then that comes to today, where there's still that little bit of debate of what services things offer you, but once again, game exclusives have become a much bigger thing, especially for PlayStation, who heavily focused on making use of their own studios and working alongside Japanese developers for exclusive titles, and also the debate of which system is just going to give you the better looking experience. That's why we even got a 0.5 generation of the One X and PS4 Pro offering even better graphics. While I would say that these kind of issues are the major things that impact which system ends up selling more than the other within their specific competition, there are certain factors that are just always happening no matter what either way. For instance, the playground effect. The idea that you're going to buy the system that your friends have. It's the one you know about, it's the one that lets you play games with them. It's just a matter of what you heard about first and what around you people are using, because hey, that just sounds like a better idea. Then there's also just the aspect of cultural favoritism. Like I said before, with 360 versus PS3, things were a little more different where the US preferred Xbox and Europe and Japan favored PlayStation. And even now, with current systems, Xbox just doesn't sell in Japan. Really at all. It never has. The original Xbox didn't do well, 360 did a little better with a couple exclusives, and now with the Xbox One, has not gone well at all. And a large part of that is because the competitors, Nintendo and PlayStation, are both Japanese-based companies, and there's just not as much history or trust with Microsoft. Those things aside, going back to the idea of what defines each generation and why someone wants to choose one system over another, I think this next generation is going to be one of the more interesting ones, because it's less about one specific battlefield and more about the emphasis each console is taking. Namely, Xbox has been heavily pushing the concept of xCloud, the idea of moving their games to a more cloud-focused streaming experience where you're not really worried about what system you own, it's just having a good enough internet connection to play whatever you want, wherever you want. PlayStation, on the other hand, heavy focus on pure hardware power and their exclusive titles. Nintendo, also exclusive titles, but also this idea of unique experiences that you don't necessarily get on the other systems, such as how the Switch is just such a different thing from what their competitors are doing. There certainly are still a ton of similarities across all these systems. There's still going to be games that appear on all of them or multiple, but I think it's interesting to note how they're all going in this different direction, where it's really going to see which of these focused concepts resonates with you, the buyer, the most. You know, we've tried to keep this channel somewhat neutral when it comes to the debate of which system to talk about, and depending on the news cycle, that sometimes changes a little bit, because before the Switch came out and the Wii U wasn't doing super hot, there was a lot of focus on PlayStation and Xbox and those two versus each other. Ever since the Switch came out, though, it's been the most recent system, it's one a lot of people are interested in. Obviously, we've done a little bit more news on that, and on certain news cycles, like with the Switch Lite being announced, we can get pretty heavy on the Switch news, since the last 10 videos have basically all been Switch, with one Xbox video that's kind of Switch related. But the point is, we try to talk about everything on here. And so looking at this study that showed, you know, hey, here's what people prefer system-wise, it got me thinking, if I polled my audience, what would they say? Now, you guys might not realize this, but when we make videos, there's a lot that goes into it. Aside from, of course, playing games, messing around with accessories, shooting videos, editing them, and so on and so forth, another thing that's super important is analytics. We study a lot of analytics, and one that we're able to actually check out through YouTube is what consoles people are actually watching YouTube on, and that gives us a little bit of a glimpse of what people are actively using more often. So over the last 6 months, when we're looking at just people who watch things on game consoles, Switch is in the lead by quite a bit at 38%. Trailing behind that, fairly neck and neck, are the Xbox and PlayStation, with PlayStation at 29%, Xbox at 27%, and then at the bottom, with people still using it, is 6% on the Wii. Of course, this is only one segment of the audience we're polling, which is people that are actually using their systems to watch YouTube, which honestly makes up a pretty small percentage of our overall views. 8% of views are done through consoles. When you compare that to phones, which is like 58%, yeah, a little bit of a smaller segment we're looking at here. There's also some other interesting info we can glean from this, like the fact that while Switch is the highest one we've gotten views from, ever since we've started focusing more on Switch since it came out, the number of views through a console have also increased, meaning that not only do we have a lot of people using Switch, but there are more people on Switch watching YouTube than on other platforms. It's also interesting is that the Switch, while having the most views, also has the shortest watch time. People that are watching on Xbox or PlayStation are more likely to just watch an entire video all the way through, whereas Switch, they're more likely to actually back out, go to their videos, move around. Very similar to comparing something of people watching on PC or a TV versus on a phone. It's the portable aspect that makes it a lot easier to jump around a lot. Now again, a lot of our videos lately have been Switch focused, so it's been building a little more of a Switch oriented audience, which I think is where you see those larger numbers, and also again, the Switch is just an easier platform to watch YouTube on. But it's interesting to see again how, depending on who you survey and how this is handled, those numbers can be vastly different. I know this has been a little bit all over the place, but the point here is that statistics are wild, and there's a lot of stuff you can learn by looking at what people are actually using versus what they talk about using and what they really like. And I think the main takeaways right now are you guys watching our videos love the Switch, and Xbox fans are some of the most loyal fans out there sticking to their system, whereas the other consoles, people are a little more willing to play across the board, though of course there are still the dedicated fans in there too.